Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
I'm really excited to have on today's show Jane Portman, who is the founder of UIBreakfast.com and the author of the 1 Hour UI Audit, which is, she also has a course of the same name. So, and I might be confusing this, Jane, so you will have to correct me if I am wrong on this, but I do see the UI Audit, which is a book, and you offer it in a couple different packages, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But primarily, it looks like it's focused on how to help bootstrappers and kind of SaaS founders, so anybody kind of developing a software company, how to help them improve their UI, which is user interface. It's how to basically make a website look better, but it has more implications than just looking better. I think good UI, and I think Jane attests to this, good UI makes the experience better. So I'm really excited to have Jane on the call today. And Jane, thank you so much for being here.
Great pleasure, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and a bit of trivia, which is kind of fun. I just found out before this call. So Jane's from Russia, as you can tell from the accent. And I studied abroad in Russia for about 4 months. And it turns out she lives in the same city that I studied in Voronezh, which is it's a pretty small world, isn't it, Jane?
Absolutely. And Voronezh is not a large city. It's not like Moscow, which you would guess would be the perfect coincidence, but it's a smaller one.
So funny. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So it was fun talking a little bit about that before the call. But and we don't have to get into that today. Today, I want to focus on what you're doing with UI Breakfast and kind of how you got your start. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, before we dive into the book and the course and everything you're building, tell us a little bit about how you got into user interface and design and stuff like that.
Sure. So I've been doing all kinds of design work for about 10 years since I was 16. I started in high school, and I grew up from a small design position towards a creative director at a large agency. But then I had my first son, and then I had my second son, and all my priorities kind of shifted, and I was really tired of managing people. And then I started out as a solo consultant in the international market. And that's been about 3 years from now that I really focused on building my authority. I wrote my first book 2 years ago. I started doing some speaking gigs and, writing more and starting focusing on products. That started with productized consulting. And all along the way, I've been helping out SaaS founders. But consulting, even if productized consulting, it doesn't really scale too well because you only have that many hours you can spend on work. So this summer, I made a decision to shift to products entirely. And right now I'm working on my new book, which is called The UI Audit that you mentioned.
Yep. And
it's supposed to distill my experience, my knowledge into something that can help many founders at once.
Awesome. So before we jump into the book, how long were you doing this productized consulting for? And you mentioned that it was hard to scale or hard to grow. Just tell us a little bit more about that before we move on to the products.
Mm-hmm. Productized consulting is just a super smart way of doing consulting because you basically have just a few awesome recurring monthly clients. And that became kind of trendy maybe a year or two ago, and I was one of the first one in the our little internet space who adopted that. So my service, which was called Correlation, was featured widely in productized consulting example listings and such, and that's been quite successful. It was a monthly creative direction for software companies, and I just had 4 awesome clients who came back to me every month, and we did a little bit of design work for each of them.
Very cool. Okay, and so it sounds like you were doing pretty well doing this. What's the goal then behind moving to products for you right now? As you're making the shift from productized consulting to to books and courses and et cetera?
I think first it's just general organic growth, so setting new goals and just moving on from one step to something higher level when you can really scale your effort and spending the same amount of time help more people because there is a lot of demand for design services, but really not a lot of good designers. So hopefully some good info products can really help founders do without like superb strategic consultants. At least they can hire a good designer and then using my books get the whole strategic idea.
Gotcha. And so, yeah, I'm looking at your website. I really enjoy the design, and I'm excited to actually get the UI Audit book. But tell me a little bit about what makes good UI. What makes a good user interface, and is this applicable beyond software as a service companies?
So the good UI is always simple. That's my favorite idea that I always advocate for. And it should be deadly obvious to the user. So everything we're working towards is clarity. You should use the language that belongs to the user. You should try to make everything familiar. So you use traditional patterns and just not make everything complicated. As a founder, you can build software simple or as complicated as you wish. And if you build simple software, it's going to be much easier to build, use, support, etc., etc.
And so I guess on that end, what are some, like, I guess, are there any, and it's tough. I know it's unique for each person depending on what they're developing, but are there certain kind of rules of thumb, so to speak, or certain techniques that are almost always applicable? Like, for example, like I might be thinking in my head, I'm thinking I like websites with a lot of white space that focus on, like, if it's content focused, where the content is at the forefront, and so they use white space. But is that always the case for everything, or like, tell me? I'm just curious if there's certain takeaways people can get from this and say, yeah, I'm going to implement that right now.
Absolutely. So the ones you mentioned, they're like evergreen principles of any kind of design, and in this spring, I just wrote another course for Envision, which is called Fundamental UI Design, and this covers these very principles. And for the UI audit, I focused more on the product ownership side so that you can plan and focus on a very simple set of features. So we audit each screen based on that, like more of a product angle. For example, good rule of thumb is try to keep just one list of content per screen and not try to like overload things with content, or try to make just one prominent task per screen, or that each screen should have a headline, which is like clear and largely set in type. Such things, they're pretty easy, but it's not always so in real life.
Right. And so on your website, and not that this is the focal point of it, but like I do like the design. How do you go about, say, choosing things like colors or fonts, which are kind of like the low hanging fruit, I think, of UI design for a lot of obviously SaaS founders and stuff like that, but also just bloggers in particular. Color palette they choose and the fonts and stuff like that. I think those are kind of the first things you notice. So are there any takeaways for somebody who has a website, some things to consider about either color or font?
Absolutely. So my big advice for founders, which grows from my experience and real life truth, which is not so optimistic at times, that you should really leave alone all the attempts to create the styles from scratch and instead use a style template. But you could use a designer to find the template for you and customize it. Because templates are really undervalued, but they are very nicely concentrated pieces of design work produced by very expensive designers. Doing something like that from scratch by yourself is impossible, and by another designer is going to be super expensive. So the problem of style is very easily solved by a template.
Interesting. Okay, great. And is that, when you say template, are you talking even potentially just starting with some sort of, say you're building on WordPress, which might not be your ideal, what you would recommend per se, but a lot of people do work on WordPress. Is it something as simple as just starting with a theme, like a
Absolutely. So it can be a Bootstrap theme, a WordPress theme, something like that.
Awesome. So now tell me a little bit about kind of getting into this transition into the book and into the course. So by the way, for those who are listening, Jane does have a free course. It's the 1 hour UI audit, which will be linked up in the show notes. And it's a free course. So check it out. It'll walk you through how to kind of improve your user interface for your software or for your website, for anything you're working on. And I think it extends beyond those two things too, because I think good UI, I'm in kind of the book publishing space a little bit. And I think UI for books, so to speak, there's something to be said for cover design and how to lay out a book and so on and so forth. So I think the implications are far ranging, but definitely check that out. But now tell me a little bit about developing this book. So you've written it looks like a few different books. You've released a few different products. Tell me about your process. Like, how do you go about creating these products, and how do you know what to create?
It's my process. It's really been refined over the years. So I wrote my first book without any real research of the audience, and I wasn't really even sure who I was targeting. But this time I took a very audience-first approach. So I was quite positive I'm going to target SaaS founders as the audience, which is pretty narrow, by the way. But it really allows your product to be crispy and focused. So I focused on the audience, and then I did a lot of research, which Amy Hoy calls sales safari. So you go out to places where your audience hangs out, like forums, support chats, places like that. And you just read what they say when they're frustrated. You look for their pain points. You search for specific phrases. So you build your value proposition based on that. And what I found out during that research is that design is not actually a very popular topic for discussion. It's always on the back burner. So everyone declaratively likes great design, but SaaS founders have to handle so many other things. Like they have to make sure everything runs smooth, the payments are handled, they have sales, marketing, everything else. And design is never a priority. So I just understood that it's going to be a not very expensive product that would allow founders do some small affordable fixes to their product, not like a large-scale redesign made by an expensive consultant.
Interesting. Yeah, very cool. So now you wrote a blog post about kind of the background on the UI audit, and one of the things you brought up was focusing on SaaS founders, which I think is great. I think anytime you can niche down is smart, and that seems like a great audience. Yeah, sure, it's smaller than other things that are out there. It's more niche in some ways, but obviously those people who are bootstrapping or starting software as a service companies, they probably need this help and this advice and need it in some form that's within their budget, let's say. So it makes perfect sense to me. But you also said that you'd started a training course called Client Onboard that never saw the light of day. And I checked it out. It looked really great. So I'm just curious, why did you scrap that, and why did you move on to the UI audit?
I just realized that I would like to serve people like my clients, not people like myself. So everyone out there actually has like a fork problem. They can either teach people skills that they have as professionals, like teach people the basics of consulting, teach people how to be smart at freelancing, or they can teach people like their clients their domain expertise. I think the second option has more potential, even though all of us have done fair share of, consulting wisdom spread out.
I love it. Okay. And so this one, when you started developing this product, did you do how did you start? Had you already, how do you, I guess that's the thing. A lot of people, I think, defer or go to teaching people like themselves because, hey, you know yourself as a potential customer. You kind of know what you want and need. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. But now when you say, well, let's go focus on the type of clients that I actually serve, focus on them, how do you reach them? If they're, if are they on your email list? How did you start to build that list? How do you start to get awareness about your book and get this in the hands of your target reader, target customer?
That's a great question. Everybody should have this question in their head before they get started with any product. Seriously, because you need to have some place online where you can reach them. In my case, I had already been really well involved in the founder community by participating in conferences in Vegas and in Europe for a few times, and I just had a lot of friends. So with the help of them, I had initial traction and had a few signups for the 1 hour course. So you need to have some good quality magnet. In this case, this is the 1 hour UI audit course. And you build the mailing list based on that. And because of my previous design work, because of my previous, speaking gigs and the course that we did with Envision, I had a pretty large email list who is not very qualified in general, but they're still quite a good overlap between the people I already have in my audience and the audience of SaaS founders. Yeah, so it's a very slow organic process. And now it's been 3 years I've been doing this actively. I can say it's really fruitful, but it's not quick.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, that makes sense. And then you also talk a little bit about, a book versus a course. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. Why create a book versus a course in this case?
Sure. When we talk about info products, there is a whole range of, price tags and the formats you can explore. You can go for a free or very cheap book and distribute it via Amazon, let's say. You can do a book which is self-published, or you can do a course. And course implies a little bit more commitment. It implies a heftier price tag, and it implies it's always harder to make an expensive sell than sell something like a $40 book. So in this case with founders, I realized that no one is going to make a 3 months commitment and pay $400 for some kind of design education because that's not their priority. But they would easily pay something in the range of $40 to $100 to get their desired quick fix. So it was obvious I needed to do something like that rather than a bigger commitment course.
Awesome.
Even though for people who like to sell more, it's a better quality investment to do like a high touch course. But in this case, it was obviously better to do a quick fix.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. And then how did you, I guess when it came to pricing, because you mentioned that range, how did you settle on that? I feel like pricing is a really tricky thing often. And it seems like you hit the nail on the head with this because it seems accessible, but I'm just curious what your thought process was and if you were able to test anything out and how that worked out.
Sure, great question. From my experience, anything in the range of, let's say, $29, $39, $49 is acceptable for the ebook. And the urge is to charge less because you think it's going to be more affordable. But in fact, if people are really interested in your value proposition, it's not going to matter whether it's $10 more or not, but you will make, let's say, 20% more money. And when you have a book, you often go to deal sites, you offer affiliate links, etc., etc. And everybody has a piece of your pie. If you start with $19, you're going to have nothing left. If you start with $49, like I have with my basic package, you're going to have something left even after all these people have their share. So it's a no-brainer. Charge more.
I love it. And how's the response been to the book so far?
The book is not live yet, but I've got a lot of pre-orders in, and I'm really looking forward to getting it live.
Yeah, and I see that it says pre-order. I just realized that.
Right. And we just launched the free course on Product Hunt today, and the feedback is really great. I'm looking forward to keeping up with that launch.
Oh, awesome. I'll hop on there and upvote. And
thank you.
Totally, that's cool. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I see this. I didn't realize that that's what the discount is. So you're doing a pre-order discount, it looks like right now, and is that good until it goes live?
There will be a smaller discount when it's live. So the pre-order is the best deal you can get.
Gotcha. Perfect.
The book was supposed to be a quick win. I really, really hope to get it out in 2 months by September, but a lot of life happened and I'm still working on it in January.
Yeah, I got it. That trust me, I've run into that before as well. And I think that's pretty common. What are I guess going forward when this thing launches, what are your goals in terms of moving forward? It sounds like you're going full time or looking to do more full-time like product sales and stuff like that. What do you envision for like the next year or two?
That's right. So I think I'm going to focus on info products for a bit longer because I'm not so technical. My ideal long-term goal is to become a SaaS founder or co-founder. But I do realize that the technical burden is so big, I can't really afford it right now because it's a lot of financial resources and a lot of stress for someone who doesn't develop things yourself.
Right. I don't know. I totally understand. And then do you actually have, I'm curious, do you actually have a team or are you just operating by yourself? Do you have any VAs or how do you manage all this?
I operate everything myself and I take great joy about that.
Wow.
I think a VA could probably relieve the burden a little bit, but it's not so huge. I'm really sensitive about taking things on, and I really love kicking things off my plate. And I really focus on the most important things and minimize other, time senders.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, we're coming up to the end here of our conversation. I know I've kept you for a bit. So I'm just curious, any last piece of advice for either software as a service founders or anyone starting anything online, pieces of advice for them, whether it's about UI or just about business in general?
Yeah, I think it's about any kind of product, whether it's info product or SaaS business. So you need to focus on your audience a lot. So starting audience first is absolutely the best way to do any kind of business, and focus on one single pain or need of that audience and build something simple for someone particular. These kind of products, crystal clear, crisp, and focused, they are the most successful always. They are easier to promote and easier to build and use.
I love it. And I'll say this too, as far as the book's concerned, a couple things that come with it is, it's not just the book, but you also have a couple things, it looks like in the advanced package, you have interviews with, I think, some pretty remarkable people. Rob Walling and Derek Reimer of Drip, Tope Awotona, I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, of Calendly, and Nagpal Teachable, which used to be Use Fedora, I believe.
Yes, right.
Yeah, Peldy of Balsamic, Josh Pigford of Barometrics. So like all these people I've actually paid attention to, read their stuff, definitely on Josh's email list and a few others. So very cool. I guess I'm curious, actually, before we would close up, how'd you get in front of these people to interview them for your book?
Yeah, we've already had all these conversations. They are waiting to be edited. These people are from my little founder ecosphere and ecosystem. They're a couple levels above myself, but it wasn't hard to reach out to them. We met at MicroConf Europe and MicroConf Vegas a few times. So, Anchor and Tope from Calendly and Teachable, I just reached out to them because I really love these pieces of software. And they were easy to address.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just switched over to Calendly, and I have a bunch of friends using Teachable now, and it looks great. That's awesome.
Calendly's founder, he researched 30 calendar apps before he made Calendly. That's why the UX is so awesome.
Yeah, that was my big reason to switch, actually, was I really do appreciate good UI when it improves the user experience, fundamentally.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like when things look good, too. Of course, when I can afford it, and obviously Calendly, it's not like it's that expensive to afford. And yeah, I've used a few calendar apps, and I think that one's the best one I've used so far. So very cool. So where can people get a hold of you, Jane, or reach you? Check out your book. We mentioned the UI course, which will be linked up in the show notes. But beyond that, where else can people reach out to you?
So my big domain is uibreakfast.com, and the Twitter is uibreakfast. So it's all there. And the big book page is uibreakfast.com/audit. And once you get on my list, you're not going to miss anything. So join there.
Awesome. I'll be signing up right away. Very cool, Jane. I appreciate you being on the show. Spasibo большое.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much. And we'll make sure that we send people your way. So cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.
And that wraps up another broadcast of In the Trenches. If you'd like to check out the show notes, just head over to tommorkes.com/podcast, where you'll find the latest broadcast. And if you enjoyed today's broadcast, please do me a favor and leave a rating and review on iTunes. That's the fastest, simplest, easiest way to support my creative work, and it would really mean a lot to me. As always, this is Tom Morkus, and if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.